Have you ever seen a product advertised on social media and really wanted to buy it? If so, click yes. If not, click no.
Have you ever wondered why you wanted to buy this advertised item?
If you answered yes, the answer is overconsumption. And overconsumption is a huge part of our current economy and culture.
Overconsumption occurs when an influencer has a product and is advertising it on social media. Then the viewer goes online and tries to buy it with their credit card.
Now we're going to show you a series of images. Please keep track of the amount of items that you have.
Before I go on, please think, how many of these do you have and when did you buy them? Did you buy them out of impulsiveness or did you buy them because you needed them? So do you have the Awala or Stanley water bottle? Do you have Sephora makeup or UGG slippers? Do you have Lululemon clothing or Nike blazers? Do you have Jordans or Crocs? Do you have a Hydro Flask or claw clips? Do you have running pants or do you have cargo pants?
If you own any of these items, you may be subject to overconsumption.
In this speech, we want to address not only what overconsumption is, but how it's caused, the environmental impact, the psychological effects that it has, and how we can better prevent it from happening.
So, what is overconsumption? Overconsumption is a broadly used term in both science and social media, and it is when humans produce less than they can consume. At the individual level, this is when someone buys unnecessary things or things that are not needed. Milston, 2024. According to the viewer, the contemporary world is shaped by rampant overconsumption, and the companies are only following the trends. Overconsumption is also accelerated by online purchasing, where people do not have to put in as much effort to buy things because they can just purchase a whole haul of things and have it arrive at their door with just a click of a button, as well as dupe culture and thrifting. While they are cheaper alternatives, they both allow someone to justify buying these cheaper or on sale items because they are simply that, cheaper or on sale.
With this being said, there are a lot of negative consequences to overconsumption. For example, things that are overconsumed are not cheap. Industries will rank up the prices just to get a lot of profit. So people who have a lot of overconsumption items will maybe be in poverty or have a lot of debt because they spend a lot of money on these things. According to Numbero, it is averaged that people in Denver pay $1,300 per person a month in order to just live here, not including the extra living costs like apartments and houses. And this also doesn't include overconsumed decorations, furniture, and materialistic items.
One of those materialistic items could be the Ulta advertisement for the Black Friday. Moving on to the next aspect, which is how kids play into overconsumption. So there was a study done where it was shown that over half of the teens in the world spend more than 4 hours on social media daily, just scrolling through either TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, whatever you want to call it, you know? So because of the high amount of time that is being spent on these apps, teenagers see repetitive ads that are conclusive to them and targeted towards whatever they like. So if they like a specific person's post, then they'll probably see more of that person on their For You page. If they like a specific person's video, they'll see more of those kinds of videos, and the list goes on and on. Basically, all of this leads to teenagers wanting to buy a lot more things from social media. These things rank from items, clothing, shoes, really just a lot of unnecessary things that we don't need, but we're influenced to buy by influencers. Another thing that this causes are kids who want to have an unlimited amount of money and they also don't really know the value of money because their parents give them money to spend on different things, and they continue to overconsume. The cycle repeats, and they don't really understand that they're spending that money because it's just given to them. So this creates adults that kind of have a bad handle on their finances because they'll either spend all their money on some overconsumption products, or they'll freak out when they can't afford those products.
Also, children are very susceptible to overconsumption because they have a switch in their mind, figuratively, that allows them to switch between different modes. And this is because their brain is not developed. And one of these modes is consumption mode, as you may have guessed. And this is because since their brain is not developed yet, they are able to switch between these modes, and this only shows up in children for the most part. You don't really see it in teens and adults, and that is because their brain has been fully developed and is at maturity. And since these children are trying to grow and trying to establish new pathways, handing over technology, which parents give away at younger and younger ages since they're becoming more lenient with not only screen time, but also when children, at what age they're allowed to get phones. Like in 2020, the average teenager got their phone at age 10, but now in 2024, the average child gets their phone at age 8. And this is because parents are becoming more lenient, and this leniency is hindering the brain development process, and this is why these modes are starting to show up in adults and why we're starting to see overconsumption become a greater problem. The 99 Parent 2024.
The next thing we want to talk about is the STEM aspect, or the psychological aspect of overconsumption. So in a study done by the Center for Social Issues, it was shown that 120 out of 122 participants, there were people who ate with no distractions, minimal distractions, or a high amount of distractions. And they measured not only the satisfaction after eating, but they also measured how full they were able to stay through the day and how that affected it. It was proven that the amount that were really distracted during this had the least amount of satisfaction throughout the day, and this caused them to want to snack later. They felt more hungry, they felt unsatisfied, and this is because the act of distraction while eating kind of draws you away from whatever you're doing, and so you don't feel as if you're doing it while you're doing it. It's the same for overconsumption. A lot of it happens because people are distracted while they're doing it, and so when they start to buy something, they don't realize that they already have a million of those at home because they're distracted of the new flashy product in the moment.
According to the Journal of Social Issues, gender has a huge role in overconsumption. It is shown that girls have a lot more overconsumption than boys. That's because girls have the urge to be popular and to fit in. They feel like the only way to do that is in order to do what influencers do, because influencers are popular. Influencers will wear things like Lululemon and they will have things shown on the previous slides. So when they see that stuff, they will want to buy it in order to become popular and fit in like them. Boys, on the other hand, don't have that kind of problem. They don't care if they fit in or are popular. So they won't have as much overconsumption, while there are some exceptions.
So now, most teenagers are often given money by their parents, whether this is through a credit card, which most teenagers have, and if they don't have a credit card, then they have a debit card. And this doesn't allow the average teenager to keep track of how much money that they are spending. However, using cash is so psychologically different because it allows you to physically see the money that's flowing out of your pocket, and it allows you to maybe reconsider that you're spending too much on one item, or that maybe you want to go buy something else that's cheaper. And it would allow you to not spend more than you can afford to pay because you're not aware of what you are spending with a credit card. With credit cards, it doesn't really allow you to be given this option to reconsider because you aren't really aware of how much money you can spend, and it can lead to horrible problems with debt further along the way.
Now, a lot of children and students have other opinions on like the brands they wear and the brands they use for everyday tasks. So that reflects their attitude as well. When going to school, for example, there are two girls going to school wearing leggings. One is wearing a brand of Lululemon and the other one is wearing a brand of Athleta. They will definitely disagree on the brandings, but that is also reflected on their attitude. And this will create different problems with their jealousy, anger, as well as their social status. They will think that if they have a better brand than the other person, they will think they're at a higher social status than the other person.
Moving on to the environmental aspect, it was shown in a graph that since 2000, our clothing utilization has gone down by a lot, and our clothing production has actually doubled between 2000 and 2015. This basically means that we are using clothes less and less because either they're less sustainable or we're just so influenced by these trends that we recycle through them so quickly that we either throw them away and they end up in a landfill, or they just aren't used at all. And the sales have skyrocketed because of all these really short trends, because after the trend goes by, a new trend comes along, the marketer takes advantage of it and sells it to people. Sales go up a lot. People spend a lot of money that they don't have on these trends. And this causes a lot of textile waste to be put into our earth every year due to all these trends. It was also shown that all these problems cause pollution, a mass amount of carbon emissions, and deforestation because of the amount of raw materials it takes to make all of this and the amount of space that all the trash takes up on our planet.
So, according to confronting consumption, there is a growing landfill crisis because of rich first world countries who, since they have their trash hauled away every week, do not think beyond the confines of their own trash can, and as a result creates a waste problem from these societies. And this is because there is a growing distance between the producer and the consumer and the trash or the waste that they produce. And this is because because of this, people associate it with industrial inefficiency, lack of recycling services, or population growth, which causes them to write off the situation entirely. Not only this, it causes people to think of solutions to solve those issues, but not solve overconsumption, and allows overconsumption to grow out of control. And because of this growing distance, it makes it near impossible for the producers and consumers to change their habits to help get rid of this problem.
So now you may be wondering, okay, well, how can we reduce overconsumption? Some ways that you can reduce overconsumption are to simply just not spend so carefully, like not spend so frivolously after just seeing it advertised. You can wait over a period of time until something and really see if you think that's worth it. And you can also do other things such as really asking yourself, do I need this? All of this has kind of led to something called dupe culture, which Alexa kind of explained earlier, but it's basically when expensive products are duped into cheaper products, and this actually makes overconsumption worse because instead of having to save up a lot of money and you think about it before buying a product, you're like, oh my gosh, it's only $10 instead of like $100. And so this causes people to buy a lot more products than they would normally, making them more over consumers.
There are many things that are overconsumed. Now, food is one of them. This is not one of the main problems of overconsumption though, but for example, if you're a fan of Cheetos and you get them every time you go to the store, that would be an example of an overconsumption of Cheetos. Now, when you like something, then you start to mentally believe that you like it, even if you don't. And then you'll start to tell your friends, hey, I really like this item. And then they'll think, maybe I'll try it. And then they'll mentally think that they like this item. This is how it becomes popular and influencers start to hear about it and start to post about it.
So now we would like to show you a video of a influencer who is advertising a product.
And so influencers like these are not only trying to enforce that people should buy things like Stanleys and things like rare beauty products and makeup, but they're trying to make sure that the public tries to get that because it looks aesthetically pleasing.
So now a theory that has been developed is still in the process of the works because of it's not fully completed yet. And it is a theory to identify overconsumption and these complex behaviors that cause someone to be an overconsumer. The second step, however, has not been taken because they cannot find a way to prevent these complex behaviors. And this, when we were researching, caused us to realize that we wanted to figure out more. And when we tried to look into it, we couldn't really figure out why they weren't able to identify this. And then we found that it was part of someone's overconsumption is part of a personality trait. And because of that, they haven't really been able to find a way to effectively and efficiently stop someone and from becoming an overconsumer. And this would be very important, we feel like, to be answered, because then it would completely change the rules and of overconsumption and help people fix their overconsumption problem.
To summarize so far, we all have a deep connection to overconsumption. If anybody here was alive during 2020 to 2022, they probably are familiar with the virus COVID-19. During COVID-19, social media apps were getting downloaded a lot. And this was because everybody was bored during quarantine. So overconsumption started to skyrocket because of this.
Kind of to add on to what Sophia said, not only did the overconsumption skyrocket because of the increased usage of social media, but it's also because people couldn't actually go out and do things because of COVID. So they had to stay inside their homes and just be bored or pretty much look at a computer screen. To conclude everything that we've said so far, overconsumption is a widely used cultural thing that has really accelerated in the last few years due to social media. It is really important to, before you buy a product every time, to ask yourself, do I really need this?
So the next time you see a new trending item or a piece of clothing that is gaining popularity, think to yourself and truly consider before you buy. Are you only satisfying your wants, or do you actually need it? Is there anything that you can do to fix your problem with overconsumption?
Here are our references, and thank you for listening.